to the basics of looping in JavaScript. So I'm going to be covering what the basics of loops are, specifically for JavaScript, but the concept is still the same, right? So what are loops? Loops are basically a way for you to execute a piece of code repeatedly, right? Over and over and over. So let's say, for example, um, I want to count from 0 up until 10, or from 1 more accurately, from 1 up until 10, right? So a good way for you to do that is to write a loop, because you know that you would like to count. So a loop is an example of that. Another example, another way for you to write a loop would be, let's say for example, you're doing push-ups. So you want to do 10 push-ups, and you know that you want to do 10 push-ups. A loop would be a good use case for you to actually write a piece of code, because you're going to be doing the first push up, the second one, up until the 10th one, right? So the concept of a loop basically, again, will be there for you to repeatedly run the same piece of code over and over and over until the condition is met, and it no longer will execute, right? So without further ado, let's dive into the code. So I'm going to walk you through the for loop. Yeah, so I'm going to quickly just like this, while I is equal to 0, or rather, let me actually just be a bit more descriptive. Count equal to 0, because I want to count from 0 up until 10, or rather 1 to 10. So count is less than 10. So I'm going to walk you through everything now. Count. Cool. So there we go. So I've written this, but let's go through it step by step so that I can walk you through what exactly is happening here. So the first section, the first part, this is like our initializers. So we're initializing the variable called count, and this can actually be called anything, right? It can be called I. A lot of people call it I or J, but it doesn't really matter. We just want to have a variable that will keep track, that the program or the loop will be able to keep track of, right? So in this case, I have count because I know I want to count, right? It can be anything. And then the second part, this is like a condition, right? So this says, okay, cool. Um, it says while count is less than 10, run this condition here. So the first step is initializer, second step is the condition, and then the third step is actually this code done. So say, okay, cool. Count is less than 10 because I set it to 0. And once that runs and there isn't anything afterwards, it goes to the third block, which is basically like our incrementer. So it says, okay, cool, go one number up. So because we want to count it 10 times. So that will keep track of the count variable, and then once we hit 10, it will stop, right, the loop, right? So let's just run this piece of code and test it out. Cool. Yeah, so this is the output, but it's a bit of an issue, right? Because I wanted to count from 1 up until 10, but it starts at 0. So actually, computers start counting from 0, but we as human beings start counting from 1. So a way for you to actually get around this would be, you can just add a +1 here, right? One way for you to get around it would be, so you can actually start outputting from 1. Cool. So now what we have is 1, 2, 3, and we see up until 10. So this is the concept of a loop again. Very, very useful stuff. This is a very basic example, but I wanted to walk you through the concept behind what loops are, how they work, and so you can get your feet wet. And yeah, I mean, I hope you found this video super helpful, and thank you so much for joining in. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one.